seen this angst over 2023. It's just been angsty conversations this year. Some of it is true and some of it honestly is not. And it really comes down to, but what choice do I want to make? And I think you and I have supported each other in this like open conversation where we don't judge each other. And we make sure that it's like, well, what impact would that have for you? How do you feel about that? Like, and I think that's why doing this Biz Bestie series has been so valuable, because just I'm hoping that other people recognize like you need the right support to help you figure out the next move and know that it's safe to not be judged and all of that.
I agree. I totally agree.
Hi, it's been a while.
Hi. It has.
What year is it? What time zone am I in? What are we doing?
You've done a lot of travel. Do you want to recap us on your travel?
Oh my gosh, I've been everywhere this year. I have been on a plane at least once per month, well, round trip, since June. So March was the first, and then I had a little break in April and May. And then in June, and then July was twice, plus an international. August, September, October, another international. I'm home. Thank God.
Yay.
You know,
How's sleeping in your own bed?
so good. So good. Yeah. I would like more of it.
Okay.
And when we're recording this, I am not 100%. I do have Oprah face on, but I'm not 100%.
I like the Oprah face. That's my favorite.
All right. So what we wanted to do for Biz Bestie chats is to do year-end reflections. And you and I were swapping our asynchronous voice notes that we've explained to everybody. And we were talking about like when we prefer to do our year-end reflections. And of course we match up. We're like sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
We are already in the month of November. We're recording on November 10th. It's going to go out on November 10th, the video. But usually you and I actually naturally start doing year-end reflections in October at the start of the fourth quarter.
Yep.
I have all kinds of opinions on why I like to do this. Would you like to share yours briefly?
Yeah, I would say briefly for me, I'm just somebody who takes a little time to evaluate and to plan. And so I have to start in October so that I have my game plan and I'm ready to run on January 1st. Otherwise, I don't get to hit my stride until March. And then I'm just the type of person who feels like, oh my gosh, I'm already behind.
Yeah.
So
Same.
October works well for me.
Same. I feel like from a systems perspective that it's real tempting to wait until that like couple of weeks break that a lot of people take between Christmas and New Year's, no matter what your like belief systems or whatever, that like the world kind of shuts down. So it's, and if you're not completely shut down, at least things are slower. So you kind of naturally have a little more space in your schedule to do that. But I really feel like if you wait until basically the week before January 1st, it's too late. It's too late. You can't really make good plans and you can't do the evaluations, which is something we want to get into. We parked some notes to, especially to talk about numbers and finance and stuff. And at the start of October, it's not that you, at least my opinion is, it's not that you start just gangbusters planning ahead for the year. It's that you've started to create spaciousness in your schedule, in your life, because the need to tidy up appointments that still need to happen, work that still needs to be done, has to start taking place in the month of October. So that by you hit this time at the beginning of November, you're actually now in a frame of mind where you can start doing the planning. And from a systems perspective, with you being your best system, which is my ethos, like you need that time in October, which is why thinking about, I'm going to start my next year planning. October 1st is hit, fourth quarter is now here, is so valuable because you need a whole month to really get your brain in the right space and also scheduling in the right space. I'm like pointing over here, like you can see my other screen. You can. My calendar's up. You know.
I know.
But you and I started reflecting together actually since October, and we were talking about numbers, and it was really funny. I mean, I know it didn't feel funny to you, but it was amusing to me as your biz buddy to listen
Mhm.
to you with your voice notes like, oh no, this is not great. And then you were like, hold please. And then you went off and ran your numbers and you came back and you're like, actually doing pretty freaking fantastic. And I thought that was so great because I am behind on finishing running my numbers.
Mhm.
I've had the same feeling, but throughout the year, you and then our mutual friend Isaac, whom you introduced me to, have
Mhm.
both asked me about numbers on various projects at various times during the year. And I'm like, I'm bleeding money. And then when I do even just back of the napkin math, I'm like, oh wait, it's not so bad.
Right, right. And that's the thing is it's so important. Like if anybody watching hears nothing else, right? It is so important to consistently run your numbers, to look at them, right? Like one of the things I always say is data is neutral. It's what you do with it that matters. But if you don't know your numbers, how on earth are you going to make any thoughtful decisions on anything?
Well said.
And I will add, most of us are doing better than we think we are.
We are doing so much better than we think we are. I was thinking, halfway through the year, this podcast thing is getting really expensive. Oh, this is really hard. I'm pivoting.
Mm-hmm.
My launch didn't go the way I thought. Now I'm shutting down the whole thing. Now I'm pivoting. Now I'm, like what way is up? What way is down?
Right.
Numbers always show us the way. And when you
Mm-hmm.
get down to brass tacks, you can really, really see it. And um, I think that checking in with numbers regularly is important anyways, from just a systems ops perspective. That is important. But the year has also been very busy and honestly a little weird.
Right.
But by this time in the fourth quarter, if you've created the spaciousness to check in with those things before you have to do your taxes, it is so much better to walk into January 1st in the first quarter and be like, it's all good. It's all good.
Mm-hmm.
Or I need to improve, but at least I know the sky's not falling. I don't have to act like Chicken Little.
Right. And I would also say it tells you a lot about how you will spend your fourth quarter.
Oh, that's a good point. Say more words. As Tonya would say, say more words.
So when I run my numbers, and part of the reason I run my numbers in October is back when I used to run book launches, when that was 80% of my revenue, I would get flooded with offers and deposits in October, right? For people who wanted to start in January working together. And so it was not uncommon for me to make a quarter's worth of revenue in just the month of October. But the problem is when you get into that cycle, right? It feels like, oh, I need more. Oh, I need more, right? You get into that hungry hippo sort of situation. And when you step back and you run your numbers, I remember the first time I did that and I was like, oh my gosh, I just made this week as much as I made all of last quarter. I don't actually have to work in the month of December if I don't want to. Or you're like, oh, I don't work the month of December. And then, last year, for instance, in October. So last year, I took a long medical leave,
Yeah.
came back in October. First thing I did was run my numbers because I'm like, oh, because I did avoid my numbers last year for a bit. So first thing I did was run my numbers and go, oh, I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to make $15,000 this month to end equal to what I did last year. Okay, so what's my available time, right? Like, kid stuff, move all that out, holidays, whatever. Okay, what is the time I have to make that money? And like, what is the best way to do it? Right. So last year, usually a lot of what we do is community strategy, right? So we help design community, do the strategy, work out a development plan, and then hand that off to the business owner. And a small percentage of them will hire us to then do the direct management of the community, right? But that hands-on management's a very small percent. So the first thing I did was go, okay, I'm going to go to everybody I did strategy plans for, and I'm going to ask, like, how are they feeling about the holidays?
Yeah.
Like, would they like some help. I'll come in, I'll do direct management for them. They can have their teams take some time off. They can take some time off, and it'll just be super short term, right? 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
So we did that. We had 5 businesses take us up on it. And it did more than cover that shortfall. But see, I would have started January so far behind had I not had that recognition. Because the next thing was like, okay, so now I'm committed for, November, December, January. I'm booked up. Okay, what do I have to do for 2023 not to end up in the same situation?
Yeah.
Right. And that's when, I looked at where I was spending my money, and I spent most of my revenue in contractor fees because I had to hire and train other people to run my business while I was out.
Yeah.
And it's easy when you've got other people running your business. Let me just tell you right now, it feels really good. It feels so good. You're like my clients are getting served. This is awesome. That's awesome. But when you run that P&L and you have to go, oh, you know what? This is exactly the right decision to keep my business open, my clients well cared for while I have to step away. But this is not sustainable once I come back. Like
Yeah.
when I come back, I actually have to do the work, and I have to let some of these contractors go because I'm just not at a stage where I can be giving that high of a percentage of my revenue to teams.
Well, a year later, because I remember these conversations from last year at this time. A year later, how are you feeling about stepping into your 2024? Because it is different. Because one of the things that you pointed out, which I thought was so good before we hit record, was when you're making the comparisons, like you have to be able to first discern, is this an apples to apples comparison? Or is this really not entirely equally comparable? Like, how do you feel about that for you? Is it apples to apples or no?
Yeah, well, so one of my big realizations, because I was running my numbers and I'm better than I was last year, but I was like, still a little off. One of my clients reorganized their own business, right? So they redid their business model and they moved me to a W-2 employee. Um, and it's kind of funny because it's the same amount of hours, like I don't feel like an employee, but by doing that, what they pay me goes into a different account.
Yeah.
So it's not reflected in my P&Ls because my P&L is all of my contractor work.
Mm.
And so what I was able to do though is go, okay, so how have I spent my time this year compared to how I spent my time last year, right? Like, so what was required to make that revenue last year? What's been required to make this revenue this year? Then moving into 2024, it's like, okay, well, now I'm in a place where I know exactly what my capacity is as a service provider. So now I'm looking at what can I do that I don't believe there's any such thing as passive income, but what are some resources I can make available for sale that people can consume at their leisure
Yeah.
without having to work elbow to elbow with me and have us both be available at the same time, like you do when I'm a service provider for you.
I love that you and I had that conversation about changing the way people consume our offers starting about mid-year. For me personally, that made a real big difference because by the end of the third quarter, caregiving for me went way up because I had some family emergencies and my caregiving load completely changed. It went from being like occasional to like I'm on call a lot more.
Right.
It's a lot more required of me. And also just for my own emotional mental well-being, like to not feel like I'm dropping balls for clients or for family was really important. And so this shift that had already started at the beginning of the year turned out to be perfect, which was, just going to toot my little intuitive horn here. I think we get our intuitive hits. We know certain things that feel right because we know
Right.
things happening in life. Um, and to shift away from doing super high touch, high ticket offers into, okay, let me go back to building an audience and let me go back to, things that are lower priced at a higher volume that can be done asynchronously or entirely DIY on your own. That kind of thing is important to listen to in those. I predict, I mean, we're going to get into some predictions here, but like I predict for 2024, because the coaching industry is definitely like the housing bubble. It is definitely popping right now and it needs to. We are both, neither of us are sad about it.
No.
there was a lot of junk that entered the space over the last few years. And the only way to sweep it out is to have a big old storm, and the rainwater needs to wash it all on out. And so it's like a hurricane, just blow it out.
Yep.
And the really high quality things will continue on. But I know I'm not alone in this, that there are plenty of service providers like us who know that a change needs to happen in their business. And like, now is the time to make those
Mhm.
changes. It's uncomfortable to make the changes. I feel like you and I did a really good job supporting each other this year through those.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to see and hear from like all the other places and ways that I support people out in the world, that there's a lot of people who still hesitated on making those changes. And I think 2024 is going to be that year for them. So,
Oh,
you
I
know,
agree. I totally agree. Well, and the thing that you and me have talked about, and I'll just touch on it briefly, but we've seen this big push toward high ticket offers, right? And it's like, and some of them are high ticket, high touch, and some are not. It's like the 100% mastermind, right? No, that's not a mastermind. I don't care what you call it. You could call it one,
not a
doesn't make it
mastermind.
so, right? But there's this big push to that. And so everybody's flocking to that, both as a provider and as a consumer. And what hit me over the head like a ton of bricks this year, because I love delivering high touch service,
Yeah.
is that high touch one-to-one work is not for everybody. And it's definitely not for every stage of business.
Mm.
Right. So the high touch one-to-one work, regardless of how much you charge for it, right? You want to charge $5,000 a month, you want to charge $10,000 a month. I don't care. But just by being able to write the check doesn't mean your business is ready for that. And you're not going to get the results, right? And I think there's some people who go, well, I got paid anyway, so what do I care, right? What do I care if they're ready for it? But with you and me, because we actually do care about our clients getting results, like that's just not our style. And so what I realized, and like I did a little $9 offer last month that I launched. It's like, actually, I need to be the person who says, I would love to work with you one-on-one. Like, this isn't about you're not good enough for me. It's just that you need a little bit of mileage under your business first. Like, you need to get a little bit under your legs before we can actually make an impact together. But here's this other thing that I think will get you there a little bit faster.
I think this is so interesting. And I'm just going to use it to like build like this back and forth bridge on our like predictions and also the things.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, and I've had this conversation with a few other people we know that we've been working with. There's been this shift, and this is how I have experienced and seen it, and other people have said the same thing also. Is that during COVID, we had an influx of brand new baby entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
There's been a whole bunch of people who've already left the space. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe not. And then there's some people who have stayed and they're still kind of in that side hustle space, or if they have some cash reserves, that they're, still in those very, very beginner stages. They don't really have enough to say, evaluate all your numbers and make strategic decisions based on numbers yet.
Mm-hmm.
And they're usually not ready for mid or higher level advanced work yet. There's certain things that you need to build in your business first. And then the people who, were really building things, my audience was, really great with women entrepreneurs who are early six-figure stage, and a lot of the people, at least on my list, who were in that exited entrepreneurship in the past year. And a lot of them were mothers, and their kids are growing up. And you and I've talked about this even with your own kids, where you have this realization where you're like, well, crap, my kid's in middle school, high school. I've only got so many years left, and this company's offering me a nice executive salary for the same or more. And I don't have to solve problems all day long and just show up and get paid. And like, it's great. We all know they're going to be back to entrepreneurship as soon as the kids graduate. But
Right.
for the like 5-6 years, like that takes a lot of pressure off, and it's a good career move. And so there's a bottoming out of one type of person who's prepared for high ticket offers. And then there's there's this group of people in the middle who are stuck, and have been watching them, and they're stuck and they're not getting unstuck. And frankly, some of them kind of enjoy being stuck. They like kind of being in that space. And so they're just going to do what they're going to do. But, the offers, at least that I work with, it don't address their needs. And then there's this other group of people who've been growing and they're ready for things, but they're like, I need help with things. I need things done for me. So they're going for done for you services. And so when you've got your own offers and they've been tailored to one group or another, and the market starts to shift like that, it can feel like you're unmoored. It just means that you have to adjust. Who am I reaching? I have chosen personally to, adjust my offers to lower priced, more mass market, not necessarily targeting the beginners, but people who are scaling and growing. And it's like, until that audience pool grows again to the point where they're back to the days of like the early 6-figure entrepreneurs who are ready to do something more, I can't continue to keep those doors open. So what do you do in the meantime? It's like, well, I got to make a pivot.
Right.
And change how I do things. I thought it was really interesting that you brought up a point before we hit record, that decisions need to be made from our numbers. But you were also bringing up the point that a lot of women don't know their finances. And I think that this like year to 2-3 year time period is going to show that to a lot of people, where like you make some extra income and it's exciting, but if you're not actually really tracking it and you don't really know what's going on with your metrics, like your audience size and your conversion rates, and like conversion rate is so important, and not just how much money am I making after tax. But I've even seen some women who are just blowing past their tax numbers too, and then they get thrown a real big bill at the end of the year, and it's throwing them for a loop. And I'm just wondering, like, are you seeing these same things too? Even though I kind of already know, but maybe the people.
Yeah, well, you know that I am seeing those things. And I think, I don't use the term like, oh, it breaks my heart, because honestly, it's like it's a black heart encased in all sorts of things. So it's hard to break. But like, it's one of the things that I do find truly heartbreaking is how many women are completely ignorant of their business numbers. And I have asked, so at first I thought it was a certain age group of women.
Yeah.
Then I thought it's a certain like region of the US, like that seems to raise women to think this sort of way, right? And then what I've recognized is no, it's kind of across the board, just for different reasons.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, what I found is the women who are very ignorant of their business numbers also are ignorant of their personal finances. So they are, and I'd love to say they're all married, right? They're all married and their husband handles everything, but that's not necessarily true. Yeah, I have a good friend of mine, has a daughter who is an adult, and they were like, when that daughter was in college, they had shared an account, right? Because parents do that a lot of times to transfer money back and forth. And there was a period of time where the daughter had not asked for help at all, right? And the mom was like, that's interesting. Usually, she runs out of, she has more monthly money. And what turned out happening is the daughter had gotten a big refund that was direct deposited into the account and didn't know about it. And when the mom was like, well, how did you not know? She's like, well, I never look at it. Oh, but how do you know how much money you have? I don't. I just spend until my card's declined.
What?
So, but if you think about it, like going back in time, this was like a 19-year-old's viewpoint on money, right? And like her own mother was shocked, but it was just like, well, it's too much stress to look at my account. So you think if, and everybody wants to say it's the younger generation that's going into business, becoming entrepreneurs. But if like they're not paying attention to their like student level accounts, right? How do you expect them, like what process of growth or transition do you think is going to take place where they're going to view money and finances differently at 28 or 38 or 48?
Yeah. I'm one of the things that comes up in my like mixed world of the woo-woo with the practical is manifestation, specifically around money. everyone wants to make more. Who doesn't want to make more money? Like, it gives you freedom, it gives you flexibility. Everybody wants more money. Thank you. And one of the things that I'm always adamant about is that magical activities happen as a result of very, very practical actions.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of conscious thought, and to be really rooted in your human experience where you're like, the world is run by money and very practical things like money and time, linear time. And when you can make peace with those things and work in harmony with them is when they start to flow more to you, but you have to pay attention to them. And it does suck when, there are difficult times or it's a crunchy time. That's when you should double down on checking in on them and checking in on your numbers. So like, with me, I woke up this year and went like, oh crap, I did not do a lot of large audience growth over the last few years because I had this very niche audience and I sold to a very small list. And I was like, I need to change this. And the one thing I double down on is I am looking at my numbers on how many new subscribers am I getting every week? What is my attrition rate? Where are they coming from? Who's doing it? How do I do that? I've got somebody through the ConvertKit referral network. I've never met them. Somehow they started referring me, brings in me the most referrals, who also stick around the longest. And
Yeah.
like, I need to know this person in the coming year. After looking at the data, I need to know this person in the coming year, because guess what? When it comes time to like, would you like to do a guest spot, say on my YouTube channel or whatever, I am definitely going to invite that person in because her audience clearly likes me, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think that there are things that we can do that are so practical that do impact the bottom line, do impact the money in the bank account. But to just start with, actually balancing your checkbook, so to speak, I think is
Mm-hmm.
the first thing.
Well, and honestly, like when we're talking about P&Ls, like people, I think they just focus too much on revenue. It's
Yeah.
not just about how much money comes in, it's about how that money is being spent and how much of it you're keeping.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but your bank balance isn't going to tell you all of that.
No, it's not. And one of the things that I had been doing with my incubator people over the last few years is because they asked me how I had paid off all that large debt from those years ago. Um and I put them into Notion templates, and it has been so useful to do the painful work of like, what do I owe? What's coming in? Where is it coming in from? If I have investments, what is the return on those things? And
Right.
to look at how much am I spending and where in my business. Like, let me take the time to do it. And this fourth quarter is such a good time to do that. If you don't have a lot of client work coming in, instead of trying to desperately get some money in the door, if you need a job, you need a job job, a bridge job. You need to go get a paycheck from somebody who will pay you consistently so you can take that pressure off. And now you have time to look at your business and do that work of analyzing it. But if you are like literally trying to keep the roof over your head right now, like, now is not the time to be just like haphazardly trying to build audience, because it's just not gonna stick or work right. Anything that does happen is probably a false positive, and it leads to burnout.
Mm-hmm. It does. It definitely leads to burnout. And in many cases, unnecessary burnout.
Totally unnecessary, right? I think that there is this beautiful space right now of and I've been encouraging like a couple people who've come to me recently with a need for legitimately, like, I need to be able to pay my rent consistently. I am really having a hard time right now. And I'm like, there is nothing wrong with a job. I don't
We have to stop villainizing
I
employment,
yeah.
right? Like entrepreneurship is not for everybody. If it was easy, we would have no employees. And I don't know about you, Mary, but I value employees in the world. When I
Yes.
go to a restaurant, I need my server not to be an independent contractor. I need them to be an employee.
Where they're like, I might get you your dish
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
tomorrow.
Right? But it's like, I mean, employees are really, really important. Employers are really, really important.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make you bad, weak, inept to favor the security that comes with employment over the risk that is required for entrepreneurship.
Well, and I think sometimes, in times like this, I don't know that it's accurate to say it is riskier to be an entrepreneur right now because the market is in flux, um, but it's at times like this where having some of this open door flow between employee employer relations versus I am my own boss and like being able to flow back and forth is so valuable. And it actually happens a lot more than a lot of entrepreneurs are willing to admit. You and I have met a lot of people where it's like they totally have their thing on the side. You know, I coach in other people's communities, I help in other places, and I am definitely an independent contractor right now, but you know, there is a little employee employer feeling in that.
Yeah,
You know, there is nothing wrong with it. If I didn't have those clients right now, I wouldn't be paying for, you know, my living expenses and all the things. And it wouldn't be providing me with the security I need in order to be creative and build my thing. And so I think like that's one of the big, you know, personal come to Jesus talks somebody needs to have with themselves in the fourth quarter this year,
I
because
agree.
seen this angst over 2023. It's just been angsty conversations this year. Some of it is true and some of it honestly is not. And it really comes down to, but what choice do I want to make? And I think you and I have supported each other in this like open conversation where we don't judge each other
Mm,
and we make sure that it's like, well, what impact would that have for you? How do you feel about that? Like, and I think that's why doing this Biz Bestie series has been so valuable because just I'm hoping that other people recognize like you need the right support to help you figure out the next move and know that it's safe to not be judged and all of that.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So should we do some predictions for 2024?
What's your what are your predictions?
Oh my gosh, I don't want to start. I just want to be like, yeah, what you said. So, but here's what I'll tell you. Um, of course, I'm in the social media space a lot, right? So I think in social media, we're gonna see a return to we're gonna go back to 2018 where user generated content is king and people aren't spending thousands of dollars on polished video and all the repurposing and the reels that have the special aesthetic. It's just going to be a lot of direct to camera, a lot of human voiceover. And I think we're going to see a lot of real life out there. I think for big brands, especially, people are going to start saying, like, we don't care what you say about your product. We want to hear what actual users say about the product. So I think we're going to see that on the social media space, which excites me because I think social media is so much better when everybody shows up as their actual self versus who they like their celebrity self, I'll say. So I think that's a big one. The other one I will tell you is I think we are going to see anti-hustle culture. I think
Oh,
we're
for
going to
sure.
start to see more people talk about not so much like keyboard lifestyle, 4-hour work week stuff, but just, yes, I could make $1 million this year if I was willing to work 90 hours a week, but I'm not. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
That sort of anti-hustle culture. What do you see coming?
I see systems and operations continuing to hit a zeitgeist point because people aren't naive anymore about entrepreneurship or small business ownership or even freelancing. And they're recognizing that without a stronger systems base in the home office, they can't actually scale and grow, and it gets really expensive if you don't pay attention to that. So I see that hitting a point. I do see a bunch of bubbles popping. I think online courses have already popped. I see the coaching industry popping before our very eyes while we're recording this right now, beginning of November 2023. Um, I think that weirdly enough, I just said systems and ops. I think that is another bubble that is going to pop because there is this conflation between especially the virtual assistant VA community, the online business manager OBM community, and actual operations people.
Hmm?
It got kind of mixed up in this gobbledygoo, and people have been branding themselves something that they're not, and then the clients are getting the results. So I think there's going to be a lot of education going on in that space, and I think people are going to have to resort themselves according to
Yeah.
what they are, which leads me into my next prediction, which I think is a lot of personal emotional work. I think that there's going to be a lot of people seeking therapy, I hope. But instead of coaching,
Yes.
they need therapy. And you've seen a rise in therapy happening, but I think you can see a lot more entrepreneurs seeking therapy. And
Mhm.
and a lot of people getting comfortable with, no, this is who I am. I am really comfortable being me. I'm seeing it in the metaphysical space. I've been having an increasing number of conversations recently. I just had one yesterday, as you know, with somebody who's learning about human design. And my thing with my people who are getting into human design, which is another trend that I am seeing. I'm seeing people getting to know their metaphysical systems more as a way to get to know themselves. So I think that will happen. But I've heard over the years from so many generators who get kind of disappointed when their charts get run and they're like, oh, I'm a generator. And it's like, yeah, you were the majority. You should be so glad you're in the majority because this world is built for you. And they're like, I want to be special. I want to be a projector. I want to be
Yeah. Ugh,
a filter.
that
And
is what I hate about personality stuff and all of
yeah,
those assessments is because
those assessments.
everybody wants to be
They want to
special.
be something else. They want to be special. But it's not special. It's just different. And it's a different life experience. And to get comfortable with like, this is me. These are the things that make me me. And
Yep.
that in and of itself, when I embrace it fully, is freaking special, especially when I
Mhm.
show up 1,000% for the people that I serve. That makes me super special to them because people aren't showing up for them in that way. And I think
Right.
that is going to be like this, mental health evolution of getting really comfortable with like, I am me. And that's
Mhm.
awesome. And I'm going to hold a lot of space for people on that too. Um, I do think I've been saying this since the beginning of this year, or maybe the end of last year. I have felt like long form content is going to make a really big comeback. It's not going to be like it was. It's different, kind of like you were saying with social, going back to this
Mhm.
user created side, which I'm so here for. But I think long form content, people are realizing now that you can't get what you need from a 30-second reel or TikTok. And you just you can't get, a
Nope.
year's worth of learning from that. And
Right.
sometimes the video needs to be longer. Sometimes the blog post, you need to actually sit down and read it. And that is going to change the way people are working instead of being overloaded. It is also the anti-hustle culture, but I think part of that is I'm willing to slow things down to make space so that I can focus and concentrate. Because now people are realizing either, yes, I really do have some neurodiversity like ADHD, or life is just too hectic and I need to calm the F down and like
Yeah.
and that's those. I could probably predict more things, but time is ticking on and I think I might have blown past your meeting time.
That's okay. I like these predictions. And I'm hoping what we could do is try to do this again, maybe closer to the end of the year and see if we're seeing newer stuff.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks
All
for having me today.
right. I'll see you later. Thanks, Tonya.
Bye.